Epstein Drive looks like it's coming online. You guys are plugged in with the juice, right? We're live. Mike, you're up.
Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and today we're talking about the new Kickstarter for the Expanse role-playing game designed by Mr. Steve Kenson. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again. Always a pleasure to have you.
Likewise.
My ever-ready co-host, Walt Rebillard, is here as well, and he is a huge Expanse fan, so he'll probably be taking the lead on most of this because I watch the show a lot, but Walt is he's a whole lot deeper on this than I am. So
it's good stuff. I'm on weapons. It's fine.
All right. So just to get the basics out right away, go to Kickstarter right now. Search for the Expanse RPG, being run by Green Ronin using the Age engine, which Green Ronin's had that for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah. We've used that system for Fantasy Age, started out with Dragon Age, and most recently with our Modern Age core book, and now, and Blue Rose, and now the Expanse.
Can we back or sidetrack for a second and just say how much that I loved the rollout of how you guys did Dragon Age? That was
thank you.
That was such a smart rollout, so that it gave you enough to play, but didn't ruin the games as they come out. That was a really smart choice.
Thanks. Yeah, that was all Chris Pramus. He did a great job with that.
Wow, I'm looking at the Kickstarter page right now, and literally I'm seeing the numbers scroll up as I'm looking at it. You are at 155 plus on a 30K goal. So congratulations. That's really impressive.
Thank you. We're thrilled, blown away.
What's the upper limit? Have you guys talked about, like, if this, if some movie studio approaches you or something like that, video game developer, like we can do this in parallel?
We're working with a great property to begin with, so, we knew that the Expanse had some passionate fans. We just, didn't quite understand the scale.
Yeah, I'm going to say you've hit every stretch goal except for the last one, which is 175K, and that's the forward by James S.A. Corey.
Yeah, so, we're working on some things beyond that.
Wow, that's nice to see. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So it looks like there's the obligatory dollar level, just to say I want to support you, and then the lowest level where you get stuff is $20, which is the PDF level.
Yep.
And $30 is the Expanse RPG and GM's kit in PDF form, and then $50 is where we start talking about books.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, cool. Welcome. I'm going to hand the imaginary mic over to you so you can take point on this.
Well, one of the things I wanted to know is with the turbulence that the TV series had involving switching studios. Did that affect you guys and what you were doing with the Kickstarter?
Well, it didn't, because our license is for the books and not the show. So although we certainly benefit from the fact that the show has brought the property to a wider audience, we are not affected by the show in any way, as far as its production or what happens with it, so far as that goes. As a fan of the show, I'm really glad that Amazon picked it up, and that it's going to continue, especially given where season 3 left off, because they're just really getting to a lot of the good stuff. But it didn't really affect our development of the game as far as that goes, because we're working with the books and we're working directly with the authors of the books. So we have their direct input as far as that goes. So it wasn't really a concern.
Right on. And probably before we go any deeper, we should issue a very huge spoiler warning. If you have not read the books, if you have not read the TV series, or you've only just dipped your toe into the massive black pool that is the Expanse, if you want to keep from swearing like Ava Sorella, please save this show for another time so that you don't have your dreams of flying into black crushed. So,
because at the end of last season, Thanos killed half of everybody in the
Exactly.
But he left Sorella around so that she could, copiously, make fun of people and swear at them like a drunken sailor.
Yes.
So, where did this all start? Like, did Chris or you say, I'm such a huge fan of this, we need to pursue this license?
Well, we worked with Ty Frank, who's one of the Expanse authors, along with Daniel Abraham. Ty Ty used to work with George R.R. Martin. And so we knew Ty from when we were working with George on Wild Cards and on Song of Ice and Fire role-playing. And so Ty was familiar with us, knew that we did licenses, so he was talking to us a while back and basically said, "Hey, we're interested in licensing the Expanse to do a tabletop game. Would you guys be interested?" And we were all like, "Yeah, absolutely." We're a lot of us were fans of the books. And so we, started talking about it basically. But a lot of it had to do with the fact that Ty already knew us and was familiar with our work.
Nice. The where did the decision to go more literary than it was the TV angle going for the license?
Well, that's the license that the authors can offer us. The TV license would involve negotiations with the studio and is a much more involved issue as far as that goes. And we're perfectly happy working with the books as far as that goes. The show is great, and working with a TV or a movie property has certain advantages, but it also tends to involve a lot more money, and it has its own complications. So we're great with working with the books.
Right on. The how involved were the authors? I mean, did you guys have to have like weekly meetings over, coffee and scones or something? Do they even eat scones, out in the belt?
I can't speak to what
scones.
I can't speak to what anyone was eating on any of the calls, but we did talk and we exchanged a lot of emails and a lot of messages, and they had a lot of input in terms of making sure that we were capturing things, the way they intended them, and that we were focusing on the aspects of the world that they felt were important from a game perspective. So, yeah, we worked very closely.
Now, the Modern Age book has been making the circles, and we've been taking a look at that, and it brings the age system into some fun territory. What kind of challenges did you guys have when you started designing for the Expanse with the age system itself? Like, did some of the space flight and stuff like that, did that present any challenges?
Sure. I mean, that was definitely one of the systems that we had to develop for Expanse, because Modern Age doesn't focus on anything as advanced as space travel. So Modern Age was great in that Malcolm Shepard, who's the developer, did a lot of the initial work in taking the age system and building a really solid modern foundation for it. And then it was just a matter of taking that iteration of the age system and looking to add refinements that suited the style of the Expanse and additional systems like spaceships and space combat that obviously featured, importantly in the stories that weren't really things that Modern Age took into account.
When you guys were developing this, and instilling some of these changes, did you have to run the changes or run some of the playtesting through the authors to say, hey, is this the right feel that you're going for? Did you get to play games with the authors? That's more important.
Sadly, no, we didn't. We did, however, run our playtest drafts by the authors and got their feedback, and we got feedback from our playtest groups along that, and we were comparing notes to see that what feedback we were getting from the playtesters matched the kind of feel that we and the authors were looking for. So there was definitely a lot of back and forth and a lot of modifications and changes to fit a lot of those things to make sure we were syncing up with expectations.
When you sent these play test drafts in, did they send them back like covered in red pen? Like
we got
like this is a run-on sentence.
No, they were very nice, and they did not edit our occasional spelling mistakes and things like that. But they did provide us with a lot of feedback. And honestly, I'm appreciative that they took the amount of time to do that and the amount of detail that they did. So I definitely wouldn't be expecting them to edit our work. We pay other people for that.
Right on. No, I was talking about like the actual drafts of the playtests. You know, like just correcting people's grammar as they're at the table. Writer joke. Sorry. But going back to this property, where does this bring the players into? We had talked a little bit about it before we hit the big green button. But can you tell us, and once again, spoilers, if you don't want to know this, now's the time to back out. Where does this bring us in the Expanse universe?
So, Rosebud is a sled. Sorry, go ahead.
So basically, we made the decision to set the start point of the game in there's an interim period in between the first two novels, Leviathan Wakes and Caliban's War, and it's about I think it's about a year or so, but several months at least. And so we decided to sort of set the default start point of the game there, so that the initial events in Leviathan Wakes have already happened. And for everybody who's familiar with the story, that basically includes the Eros incident. And now it's that sort of weird interim waiting period where something is happening on the surface of Venus, and Earth and Mars are poised, pretty much with fingers on triggers on either side of things, with the belt caught in the middle. So it's a very sort of pivotal moment, and we felt it was a really good starting point, where things have been set into motion, but not so far along that you feel like you're starting the story after it's already all happened.
Excellent. Now, one of the other questions I had as far as like game development and challenges go is the cool thing about the Expanse is, even though you're dealing mostly with humanity, because of our exposure to different environments, people have adapted and their bodies have changed slightly. So what do you do when you have the one player at the table that wants to play a belter? And what kind of challenges does that present? Because obviously, if you grew up in the belt without any type of special assistance medically, you're gonna have a hard time if you have to travel to Earth or even Mars, and vice versa. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We address the characters' origins, whether they're an Earth or from a Martian or a belter, in character creation. And the primary issue, as you point out, is that basically characters have a native gravity that their bodies are adapted to, and if they're not operating in their native gravity, they have to deal with certain conditions or certain penalties. But it's notable that to a certain degree that applies to everyone. And while belters do have a difficulty with gravity as heavy as Earth normal gravity, similarly, Earthers who are raised in Earth normal gravity are not as capable in microgravity as belters are. Belters are much more adapted to microgravity because it's their native gravity. So there's a little give and take as far as that goes. And some of it, just like the narrative of the novels, relies on some management on the part of the game master. If you're going to have a group of mixed origin characters and you want to run a story that's set on Earth, then you're going to have to come up with some way to either include the belter character with some kind of support, or work a way around it, so that the character's involved in another fashion. But a lot of that is really is a narrative challenge, and we talk a little bit about that.
Nice. Now it seems like you got a lot of bases covered, and with a property like this, you would have to. As far as tone, the series as it progresses goes back and forth several times for different tone, which is really impressive for a series, because most of the time, even book series, you usually keep a steady tone. It's either military fiction or it's science fiction noir or something like that. But the Expanse seems to be able to jump genres back and forth and do very well with it. Do you talk about that at all in the book?
We do. We talk both about the sort of overall tones of story arcs and even entire campaigns. And we also talk about the way that the age system breaks down different encounters or scenes. For basically there are action encounters, which are things that involve a lot of things happening very quickly. Often, combats, for example, or dealing with a lot of hazards. There are environmental or exploration encounters that involve the characters interacting with their environment a lot and can be investigation and exploration. And there are social encounters that, not surprisingly, involve the characters interacting with other characters. And we talk a lot about the sort of the tone and the pacing of those different types of encounters. And in the Expanse, we also add what we call interludes, which are basically a fourth type of encounter that don't occur in action time. They don't occur in that real time where you're measuring each moment, but instead occur in a much more narrative time where you're dealing with days and weeks. And it makes it much more useful for dealing with interspersed scenes where the characters might be on a ship for 2 weeks, or they might be off on their own on shore leave for a week doing their own things. But it still maintains in the game system a series of actions that you're performing as part of that. So it's not, the game system supports that rather than it being an entirely, and you just do something kind of narrative.
Now, do the interludes, do they have something to do with just the characters, or like, is it like outside influence? Like they get to play some of the actions of, the various political interests that are going on?
You could play the game that way. And we talk a little bit about the notion of playing a multi-leveled Expanse game, where you're also looking at some of the big picture stuff as well as the individual character level stuff. And interludes do make an effective kind of interface between those. It's not a assumed focus in the game. We don't by default assume that a group is going to do that, but you could.
Now, here's one of the things I'm hoping for in the Expanse RPG, a linguistics guide for speaking yes. like you're from the belt. Did you guys go into any of that?
We did, but we do have a certain limitation there. We do have a section on that talks about the Belter Creole, and it provides some vocabulary from that. But this is one area where we're somewhat limited by the nature of our license, because much of the Belter Creole on the show was actually invented for the show. The show had a linguistic expert actually design a Belter language for the show. So the stuff that we're able to use is the stuff that appears in print in the books. So it will not be as extensive a Belter glossary as you might expect from like the entire language of the show.
So there's not going to be any special references to Mike being the Denver salsa dance champion or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge, unless somebody's been changing my text.
That's a really deep cut. We stuck with that the first year of this podcast, which was 10 years ago. But,
I'm bringing it back around.
And it's the exact title is Salsa Dance Champion for the Rocky Mountain Area Husky Caucasian Division.
It never gets old to me.
They really insist to say that last part. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's an important distinction.
It's a very important distinction. Crucial, you might say. Anyway, back to the Expanse.
I'm always a huge fan of art in an RPG book. Sometimes I'll buy, even if I'm not a big fan of the system, I will go out and buy massive amounts of dead tree matter just to get at the art and have it on my shelf. Can you talk about the art process and possibly working with the author, because the covers in the books are very they're more abstract than they are detailed. But your art on your Kickstarter is phenomenal. It's really good. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, we have the good fortune of having Hal Mangold on art direction, and Hal has a great eye for both graphic design and for art. And you can tell from just the initial stuff that we've got, like the cover design and some of our pre-generated characters and the like on the Kickstarter, that we're going for a really some people described it as a little too science fiction-y art style. I think it still fits the game pretty well, but still pretty realistic style overall, and it's going to be a very slick looking book. Folks can take a look at the quick start PDF that you can download from the Kickstarter to get a sense of how things are going to look. That's not finalized by any means, because graphic designers, but it gives you a really good idea of the where we're going in terms of the presentation. And I think it's going to be Green Urnine, everybody at Green Urnine loves really nice looking books. So I think that we're going to make an effort to make this a really nice looking book.
And in keeping with that, the cover for that special edition looks sexy.
I know, right?
That is amazing looking.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of it's very simple, yet it really has a really great design with all of the orbital paths and everything like that. Again, that's just Hal being awesome. So
yeah, where does that fall into as far as tiers go? Is that the
I want to say the special edition. I think I would know that off the top of my head. I want to say it's the $80. Yep, starts at the $80 level.
And you guys have some pretty slick stuff that you can throw in there too, like Game Master screens, inserts, combat trackers. I mean,
yep, that's all in the works. GM screen is already planned. So,
and the image of that, the iconic opening salvos, basically from the first half of the first book, right on the front of that.
Yep. That's actually one of the first pieces of art we developed.
Really?
For it, yeah, precisely because we felt it was such an iconic moment in the books.
Yeah. everything off. That's just really, really gorgeous. I like too that you have a nice interplay in the art between ship life and life in like the habitats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you get to see people just out in the black doing their thing, and then you also get to see people just going to work. So there's normal right beside extraordinary. As far as like your stretch goals went, speaking of extraordinary, because you guys decided a hammer wasn't big enough to smash stretch goals. You decided to use one of those wrecking balls. You have lots of stuff that is included in the book, as far as like more about Mars, more about Earth, stuff like that. What about follow-on books? Is this going to be an entire line planned?
We're definitely talking about plans for future products, and we're not ready to announce anything yet, but there definitely will be further products. There are definitely going to be some follow-up. I mean, the very fact that we set things up so that the game starts after the first novel with several others to follow gives you a sense of the sort of thing we have in mind in terms of expanding out the setting and the range of options that you have for it.
Yeah, this is actually very exciting, especially if you're a fan, because I mean, to have something like this where you can play those favorite moments or create some of your own.
Mm-hmm.
You can really push the boundaries of where the author started and seeing
absolutely
what's next. Mike, did you have any questions, seeing as I'm hogging the microphone?
Hey, no, I'm good listening along. Plus, my network's kind of flaky here at the moment, so I'm content just to let you guys do your thing. I'll give you a shout if anything comes up.
Nice, like more accolades from Denver,
for example.
For example. So no, I just, like I said, I'm really impressed with the Kickstarter, and
we already
asked
though,
you,
right?
Yeah, I watch a show with my wife. It fills the gaps for us between Game of Thrones seasons, which are kind of long. But so have we already asked about future stretch goals past the 175K mark?
We're working on some, but we haven't announced any yet.
Okay, all right. No, it looks really great. I know this is a conversation you have to have had, and I'm going to ask you the question. You'll politely decline, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you ever wonder about how high it's going to go?
I had no idea it was going to go this high, so I have no idea, honestly.
Yeah, it's kind of reminding me of Fate Core, just because I'm looking at and literally seeing numbers tick up as I'm talking to you. So it's been a while since I've seen that on Kickstarter. It's
cool. Really great to see so much interest. So I'm really happy for that. It gives us the great opportunity. One of the nice things about Kickstarter is that it moderates your risk that you take, because putting out any new game product is always a risk. And Kickstarter gives you a great way to know up front how big your audience is as far as that goes. So now we know that we can really pull out all the stops. I mean, we're going to create the best product that we could to begin with, but now we know that we can sink some money into this, and we can make it even better. So that's great. We're really excited about that.
Does that give you guys any sense of, oh crap, we better knock this out of the park?
Yeah, I mean, there comes a certain a sense of responsibility when that many people are that excited about it. I mean, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a certain amount of anxiety that comes with like, oh wow, I guess this had better be good. But we have a great great team. I had a lot of wonderful freelancers who did writing on the book. As I said, we have great art direction. So, and this is far from our, first rodeo. So, I have no doubt that, people will be pretty happy with how it all comes out.
Yeah, there's so much potential for a game like this, especially when you have such deep wells to draw from.
Absolutely.
Because the writer looks like he's not going to slow down anytime soon, or the writers rather, and to be able to have something to keep going back like this is huge.
Sure. Well, I mean, and even if the Expanse series wrapped up, right now, it's still such a vast setting, with so many unexplored possibilities that you could sustain a game for years, just poking around in its, weird corners and things like that. There's a lot.
So there's, I mean, it's the sort of hard sci-fi / military sci-fi niche that the Expanse fills. There's a lot of that out there. I mean, there's a lot of popular novel series that has crossed over so much to TV. You give any thought to, other series, other, books in that genre you might be interested in, taking a look at for this rule set?
Well, one giant project at a time.
Oh yeah, okay.
But
you're making Dune, aren't you? This is the next Dune RPG. Sorry.
Oh well, that'd be a whole different game, though.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
especially since it bridges millennia of story.
Yeah, right. Dune has a whole different. Honestly, if we were ever to do Dune, not to go off on a tangent, but if we were ever to do Dune, I'd want to adapt our Chronicle system from Song of Ice and Fire for Dune, rather than
that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
do it with the Age system, because Dune is all about the the noble houses and your allegiances and all of that, and even some of the weird powers stuff would adapt pretty well from Chronicle. Chronicle would be great for something like that. But that's neither here nor there, because we don't have the Dune license and we don't have any plans at the moment. But
well, I hear you. Thank you for talking about Dune, because usually I make these ridiculous statements like that, and people just let's move on to the next thing. But you addressed it, and I really appreciate that. No, it just seems like it'd be a great. There's so much in that that particular genre. John Scalzi's Old Man's War comes to mind. Blue Mars, some of the others. I guess this is really a feather in the cap for the Age system. And I know Modern Age, it's out in PDF, pre-order for print. Quick Start's available for free on RPG Now for people who want to check that out. I know Malcolm couldn't be with us today. Can you touch just briefly on what's next for Modern Age?
So Modern Age has a companion book that's coming soon that is a lot of expanded options for the system, provides a lot of customization tools for game masters. Modern Age has a lot of options right out of the box with just the core book, but the companion really takes it to the next level in terms of having a lot more options to build the kind of campaign that you want. And it looks at a lot of the different systems and expands them out in a lot of regards, from the Arcana and Extraordinary Powers stuff to how to handle a lot of just unusual innate abilities that characters might have. If you want to do even some low-level superpowers, or things that would be like cybernetic augmentations, or characters who are I don't know, fairy-blooded or demigods or whatever. To provide you with a lot more options for the kinds of games that you can run. So that'll be a really useful resource for the core book right out of the gate.
the Arcana stuff, I mean, is that being directly inspired by things like the Magicians or the Rook or like properties like that?
There's definitely a lot of inspiration in terms of sort of modern urban fantasy as far as that goes. And that's definitely one of the genres that modern age is meant to take advantage of. And the game talks about if you want to do, something like the Magicians, or you want to do, basically any kind of, modern crossover of, fantasy, and the modern world. The game is set up to do it. So there are a lot of options there. We're going to continue expanding on those.
Excellent. Now with modern age, you talking about cybernetics, will like internet systems and hacking be addressed? Because I know that like a lot of games that are out there, one of the biggest complaints that you have anytime you enter a network or you enter a hacking phase or slicing or whatever people call it, it's always well, all right, guys, the Decker's doing his thing. Let's go get a smoke while they're doing their thing. Is there anything addressing that in the modern age system?
Modern age does have a system of handling essentially those kinds of challenges and encounters that I think abstracts things sufficiently to make them pretty quick and easy to do without, let's everybody take a break, while we play out this long, hacking challenge. But, it still keeps them interesting and, really gives the characters who have those specialized skills an important role to play. So I think that system works well for a lot of different aspects of gameplay that are not combat, like investigations and the like, that play out pretty well.
So modern age is pretty geared, can be perfectly geared to something like playing Cthulhu-esque horror or anything like that.
Yeah, you could definitely do that.
So library use can be a scary thing, just like combat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the game is not heavily skill focused because it still focuses primarily on the abilities with the different ability focuses representing, particular areas of training. But it doesn't get into the really, really fine levels of skill detail. A lot of the age systems approach is really, here's a difficulty, make the roll, and you go from there. It's, and the stunts help to, provide some flavor, but otherwise it doesn't focus, on minute levels of detail in terms of action resolution.
Now, what's the craziest thing that people have been able to manufacture using modern age? I mean, obviously we have the Expanse and the earth shattering ceiling that you guys just smashed through,
right?
But have you had people write in say, "Hey, I love the system. This is what I'm doing with it"?
I've heard a lot. Ironically, I've heard a lot of people who want to run Shadowrun with the modern age system. And that might just be because Shadowrun is so ubiquitous when it comes to modern urban fantasy stuff now, especially for gamers.
Plus, the Shadowrun system is so intuitive and easy. I could see wanting to make it a little crunchier and challenging.
Right, no doubt. I'm sure that they're looking for the level of rules detail that modern age can bring.
It's the opposite, but yeah. Netflix Bright, that would be fun.
Yeah, you could totally do that with modern age.
I love that. That is such a guilty pleasure, that movie.
Yeah,
they need to do like 5 more.
Yeah, I wish Max Landis wasn't such a creep because I feel a little bad watching it, knowing what he's up to. But yeah, it's a fun. I just watched it the other last week in the gym. So yeah, I have to agree with you on that.
Nice. The as far as like going back to the Expanse again, where did you guys like get your play test group from? That's one of the questions I've always wondered. Is it all in-house stuff? So, or I mean, what goes into, I don't think that's a question you get asked very much, but what goes into getting into a play test group? Like, hey, we want to develop this modern version of Fantasy Age, or we want to develop this license for the Expanse, and we're going to use these players to do it. Now, here's an NDA. I mean, how does that work?
Well, in our case, it was largely working closely with the freelancers who were working with us on the project, and unsurprisingly, our freelancers were all gamers, and they all have game groups. So we were like, so who wants to run some games? And not surprisingly, people volunteered, and so we were able to keep things fairly in-house, so far as that went, for the most part. If you have the luxury of doing a long, widespread playtest, that's great. And some games have a long enough development cycle that you can do that. Even publish your playtest draft and have all your players play it for a year before you actually publish the actual book. But for most games, playtest tends to be a relatively in-house process usually.
So it's kind of like a perk of the job. Yes, we have help. We have dental. Yeah. Oh, and you get to check out free games anytime we.
Pretty much. That used to be a thing. That was the big thing for my gaming group when I was a freelancer, was that we got to play test all kinds of things, because I would be like, "Hey guys, I'm working on this thing, and we get to play test it." And they were like, "Okay, what is it?" So we ended up starting more games that way.
That's fantastic. I got to get on one of those lists. How many more days do we have on this Kickstarter?
I think we're only in our second day, so I'm pretty sure that we've still got another 29 days to go.
Oh my God. Oh God. What do the authors think of the success of the Kickstarter? Have you talked to them?
They seem very pleased, and I've only been communicating via email. So I think that Chris Pramus has had a chance to actually talk, but yeah, they seem very happy with it, and have been offering their encouragement and all of that. So we're very appreciative of their support. And obviously, they've been bringing it to the attention of their fans, which I'm sure has a good deal to do with its success. So
now, do you think this is going to be like a gateway drug for people who might have been into the books but never tried role-playing games before, and vice versa?
I certainly hope so. I think that'd be great if it is. I'm always excited by anything that offers the prospect of a pathway into gaming, for somebody who's never tried it before. So, I'm pretty excited about that notion.
Just out of curiosity, did we see much of that with Song of Ice and Fire?
We did see some of that. We definitely, especially at some of the sort of more media conventions like PAX and things like that are a little broader than sort of the game specific tabletop focused conventions. We would definitely see people who were fans of the show, whose eye would be caught by, oh hey, it's a Song of Ice and Fire thing, and who'd be like, so what's this? And we would be like, well, it's a role-playing game. And a conversation would ensue about exactly what that was, and how that all worked out. And we definitely sold some books to people who were fans of the books or the show, who were curious to try it out. So it definitely does happen.
Now, at what point do you think that you guys will run out of steam as far as stretch goals and stuff go? Do you think that's going to happen?
I hope so. That honestly would be a good problem to have. We're discussing plans, and we've got a lot of possibilities in the works. If it goes so crazy that, we just run out of ideas, then, like I said, I think that's a pretty good problem to have at that point.
Yeah, while we've been sitting here, you guys have hit the accelerator several times. So
yeah, we're up to 157.
Dear Lord.
So,
do you have somebody on staff that just sits there and goes, "Guys, you'll never guess, we just got 10 more"?
Yeah, our company Slack channel is full of notifications about where the Kickstarter is, and every like major break point or whenever we hit a stretch goal or something like that, somebody will like come on and be like, "We hit another one," like and like announce the amount. So
somebody's using it as like an exercise tracker. Every time the Slack channel rings, you just change exercises or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Another 10 reps. There we go. Somebody's getting real buff off of this. So with us reaching toward the bottom of the hour, Steve, because you've been very generous of your time, and we know you're probably got like 5 billion things to do and 100 emails to answer at any given point.
No
what would you like other people to know? What would you like people to know other than what we've already discussed about the Expanse Kickstarter, or even Modern Age, or anything that Green Ronin has coming up?
Well, I guess I'd really, if folks are interested, I strongly encourage them to check out the Quick Start products that we've got available for both the Expanse and Modern Age. There's a separate Quick Start for each one that really give you a really good overview of, what those games are going to offer. You're going to get a real sense of how to play them, a complete adventure you can play, and a set of ready-made characters so you can play it. So, if you're at all interested, and especially if you're an Expanse fan who's interested in tabletop gaming, but, wants to give it a try, then, check it out. I think that it's a great lead-in, and it's a great opportunity to get a taste of what those games offer, for free. So why not?
Absolutely. Now on the Cape and Cowl set, you guys just released another character pack, didn't you?
For Icons?
For Icons, yeah.
Yes. We just did the Hero Pack Annual that Dan Hauser put together. And that's a Dan Hauser production, basically from top to bottom. It's another like jam-packed 100 pages of illustrated, statted out Icons characters. Dan did a great job as usual putting it all together. So for folks who can't get enough superheroes and supervillains and super characters in general, and like the Icon system in particular, it's a great product. It's up on Drive-Thru RPG and RPG Now as usual with all the other Icon stuff. So by all means, check it out.
Anything else? I know, like I said, I was saying a minute ago, you're probably so busy. You need a publicist or an assistant. Are you hiring? Just kidding. Do you have anything else coming up for Icons that you'd like to talk about real quick?
Nothing I can talk about yet. I've got a couple of things in the works, but sadly, as you said, my free time has been kind of limited. So, unfortunately, Icons is one of those things that's largely my spare time kind of project.
Gotcha. Mike, parting thoughts.
Sorry, I was talking to mute. Hey, it's always a pleasure to have you, Steve. Really, thanks for making the time to come talk to us.
Likewise, always great talking to you guys.
Really appreciate it. Mike, do you want to give the outro, or do you want me to do it? Because dental work.
It's all right. Actually, today wasn't that bad at the dentist. Or the painkillers haven't worn off yet, so I'm good. Thanks everybody for coming out today, and thanks to our listeners. And we will catch you next time on the Banff Podcast.
Cheers.